5 won the win over the Mets last night. Atlanta remains in the wild card hunt. They're still on the bubble, but sit one game behind the Diamondbacks and the Mets, who are tied at 87 and 70. San Diego's the National League wild card leader. AP Top 25 football this week. No change among the top 4. Texas remains number 1 at 4-0 with 3-0 Georgia at number 2. The Ohio State Buckeyes are 3-0 and remain number 3, while the Alabama Crimson Tide are 3-0 and are number 4. Tennessee up 1 spot this week to number 5. The Volunteers are 4-0. Ole Miss dipped a spot to number 6. They're 4-0. 4-0 Miami up a spot to number 7. 3-0 Oregon up 1 spot to number 8. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
The holidays are coming, and Lowe's is here to help you get ready. Right now, get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, save an additional $75 on select cooking appliances, $899 or more. And get even more of an interior refresh with up to 40% off select vanities and free delivery. Because Lowe's knows holiday hosting. Valid through 10/16 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Appliance savings vary based on purchase amount. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for details.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have a full tank of gas first before road tripping through the desert.
Empty? Seriously? Maybe I can walk.
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
Maybe I can't.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
Off and running in today's edition of Football Full Circle, right here on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel kicking it around the NFL for the next hour. A lot of news and notes to get to. We are prepped and ready for a divisional matchup this coming Thursday, Scott. Dallas and the New York Giants. Dallas looking terrible right now. They get the Week 1 victory over the Cleveland Browns in dominating fashion. They've now lost 2 straight. It's make it or break it Thursday night against the Giants.
Yeah, it really is, right? It's hard to believe that the upside is with the New York Giants heading into this game after their impressive win this past week, and the downside is with the Dallas Cowgirls, right, as I like to call them. Are they really going to fall to 1-3? I mean, if that's the case, if they actually lose this game, Joe, you know you're going to hear the rumors about the firings, although I don't think Jerry Jones would actually do that, but you're going to hear grumblings and rumblings. You got CeeDee Lamb last game crying on the sidelines. He's not getting the ball enough. They can't run the football. It really is, for a game in September, kind of a make-or-break game for Dallas. I mean, this is a game you have to win. You want to make the playoffs, you got to beat the Giants even on the road. They've owned the Giants, right? It's been like 20 years since they've actually lost a game to the Giants. So if they were to actually lose Thursday, wow, you talk about hitting near rock bottom, and that might be it.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the bigger question, Scott, is if they do, in fact, drop the game, right? At 1-3, would Jerry Jones potentially pull the trigger on McCarthy, or does he keep it together to see if they could get back into the playoff hunt, see if they could challenge the Philadelphia Eagles? I understand it's only a 1-3 start, but knowing about the expectations of this team, knowing that they paid Dak Prescott and that they paid CeeDee Lamb, and you're not getting the most for your money potentially in regards to wins. I mean, what do they do? And here's the other factor as well. I understand the offense hasn't been as consistent, but I have bigger concerns, Scott, about the defense. Back-to-back weeks, Derrick Henry, 150 yards on the ground. Alvin Kamara, the week before that, 115 yards on the ground. We see Washington winning games with Dan Quinn and a rookie quarterback. What about this defense moving forward? Because I don't think it's so much about Dak and the offense as it is the defense being able to stop the run through 3 weeks.
Yeah, listen, it's a little bit of both, right? That offense for the Dallas Cowboys, a lot of those yards came, last week when the game was no longer at hand, and maybe Baltimore had let their guard down there a little bit. But, listening to Jerry Jones, he was asked about that after the game with Mike Zimmer, any regrets? He was all, no, he's our guy, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think they would actually fire him. If it only took a 1-3 start for McCarthy to get whacked, I don't think Jerry would have brought him back. Now, if the answer is Bill Belichick, and Belichick is calling him up saying, "Listen, I know you were thinking about it. You're 1-3. I'm ready. I can get out of this TV contract. Maybe that would change things, but I don't think he's actually going to get fired before the end of the year.
Well,
maybe about that point."
You think Jerry would turn to Zimmer on an interim basis, being a former head coach, and knowing what he was
can't. Right? If he's half the problem, how in the world can you fire the head guy and you reward the guy who's half the problem is based on the defense, right? So now they couldn't do that, especially if Belichick is the answer, right? Does he want Belichick? Then do you want to put someone in there that actually might have some success? I know it sounds goofy, but then what do you do at the end of the year? Do you fire that guy and bring in Belichick anyway? So. McCarthy's going to be there for a while.
We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. We'll get into that game in the week 4 slate in just a little bit. Thoughts about Jaden Daniels and the Cincinnati game in regards to the Bengals? Everybody thought the Bengals starting 0-2, been there, done that. This is a walk in the park. They lose that matchup outright, 38-33. We saw Joe Burrow light it up, but we also saw Jaden Daniels. And I said the next 6 games potentially for Washington are very winnable outside a matchup against the Ravens. They could go toe-to-toe with the Ravens, assuming that Baltimore played down to the level of competition week number 2 against Las Vegas. This potentially is maybe just a wild card team, and Jaden Daniels looking all like a star in the league right now through 3 weeks.
Yeah, but it's really been one game, Joe. Let's not forget he threw 0 touchdown passes in week 1. He threw 0 in week 2. So it took him 3 games to throw his first touchdown pass, and even that was to an offensive lineman, right? So he's got the spectacular plays. I get it. They're running the offense perfectly, keeping it real conservative. He had 2 incompletions the other day, only 17 on the season. So he's doing what they need to do to be competitive, move the ball down the field, but. Well, I tell you, out of all the games this week, and I haven't looked at them all completely, I do think Washington's in a major bounce back the wrong way spot. I like Arizona. Everyone's all over Washington. Jaden Daniel, the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I like them, and I still like them, obviously, but this has got major letdown. You go from playing Cincinnati on national TV, short week, you're going to fly from Cincy out to Arizona, and then take on a feisty Cardinals team. That line dropped from 5.5 down to 3.5. I'm going to wait till the end. Hopefully it gets down to 3. I think Arizona wins that game.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, Scott. I think we might see a little bit more regression out of Arizona than we see Washington. I'll disagree with you in regards to Jaden Daniels in this assessment. Yes, you're right. He didn't throw a touchdown pass in the first couple weeks. But you saw the progression, right? From week 1 to week 2. He put his team in a position. The passing yards got better. And then from week 2 to week 3, you saw the deep ball now incorporated into the offense. He went deep to Terry McLaurin, especially when the game was on the line, to have the confidence to go deep to your number 1. If they can get Terry McLaurin involved in that offense, even more so, that'll open up the rushing attack with Brian Robinson. And we know about the ability of Jaden Daniels. Think about this. They're playing with house money, right? Nobody's expecting this team to get over the 6.5 win total. They're 2-1 on the year. If they could pull a couple more games out, they could go all out in regards to the playbook, and it wouldn't hurt you one bit because your number 1 goal is to develop Jaden Daniels for year number 2.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that they haven't punted in 2 straight games. That's
crazy.
That might be the most. I doubt, Joe, that's ever happened before, at least not in modern times, right? 1 game, okay, that's an anomaly, but we've seen teams do that on occasion. But back-to-back games without punting, that is so bizarre. It really, and then you throw in one of the games, they didn't score any touchdowns against the Giants, which is bizarre in itself. So there's a lot of craziness going on with this Washington team. They're all giddy now. I get it. Everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid, national TV, perfect time. If he would have had this past Monday night's performance against the Giants, 1:00 game with 7-8 other games going on, all right, we would have taken notice, but not like now, though.
Right.
Not like now.
Right. It would have gotten buried in regards to the 1:00 action. You wouldn't have made a lot of a big deal about it, even though it was an upset, a monumental upset. I agree with that. How about Minnesota? Are they really a contender right now? 3-0. It has been Sam Darnold. It's been the addition of Aaron Jones. Rushes for over 100 yards. He can catch the football. We know about JJ in regards to the passing attack. But how about this defense? Shutting down CJ Stroud, shutting down San Francisco in week number 2. If they play like that, Scott, they potentially can win the North and maybe bounce back to a 12-win season.
Yeah, and they don't even have TJ Hawkinson yet. I pointed out in other shows. I mean, think about when they get him back, how good that offense is going to be. I mean, ultimately, though, it's do you believe in Sam Darnold? But I'll throw them in the mix with Pittsburgh is another team. Like, are you winning the battle but losing the war, Joe? What do you do with McCarthy? What do you do with Sam Darnold, who's only on a 1-year contract? Let's say they make the playoffs. Let's say they win a first-round game. We'll keep it realistic, right? They win a first round and they lose in the second round, kind of like Tampa Bay last year after losing to Detroit in the second round. Do you re-sign Sam Darnold? Do you let him walk?
I think you have to, Scotty. He's not.
What do you do with J.J. McCarthy for then? I mean, what do you do with him? You throw him away?
This is the issue that a number of teams have with reaching up and grabbing a rookie that might not be NFL ready. Only time will tell. Scott and I will come back. We'll break down week number 4 on Football Full Circle. Keep it where it is.
Don't look like an idiot at work.
Know your stuff.
Football and everything else.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The son of Ryan Routh, the man accused of a second assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump, has been taken into custody on federal charges of possessing child pornography. Investigators say they discovered hundreds of files with child pornography during a search of Orrin Routh's residence in Guilford County, North Carolina, Saturday, conducted in connection with an investigation unrelated to child exploitation. The 2 charges he faces include receipt of child pornography and possession of child pornography. Outgoing West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin said Tuesday he will not back Vice President Kamala Harris's White House bid after she came out in favor of changing Senate rules to pass abortion protection laws. Manchin, who is retiring and left the Democratic Party earlier this year, said, quote, "Shame on her. She knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. It's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together." Outgoing Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, another retiring Democrat turned independent and filibuster defender, also panned the idea. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
Back on Football Full Circle, Lisi and Wetzel breaking down week number 4 in the NFL. A lot of news and notes to get to, but, when you look at this matchup this coming weekend in the AFC, Scott, we have Houston and C.J. Stroud coming off a disappointing loss, and then Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars that already look dead and buried in regards to the AFC, potential bounce-back spots. Give me your thoughts about Doug Peterson, big picture. Is he the guy to potentially lead this team over the next couple of seasons, or do you think, in fact, he gets let go? That offense has looked atrocious right now. Trevor Lawrence has regressed and more turnover prone now than he was last year, even in the first half of the regular season. I don't see any way this team makes it past the midway point with Peterson being the head coach.
Yeah, it makes you think 2 years ago was the anomaly, and this is what we're really getting. I mentioned this on one of the shows I did here, Joe. If the Jacksonville Jaguars would have said, you know what, I'm not giving Trevor Lawrence $50 million a year. It's just not happening.
Right.
If they would have put him up for sale this offseason, could they have gotten 2, 3? I know they would have been asking for that, but do you think ultimately they would have had a team give them 2, 3 first-round draft choices? Because the answer is yes. I would have done it. I'm not paying these guys $50 million. I'm not paying Tua $50 million. That was an idiotic contract, just health alone. I'm not paying the Trevor Lawrences of the world $50 million. I'm not doing it. I mean, I'll start over again. You want to give me 3 first-round draft choices for him? I'll start all over again. I got 5 years with a rookie quarterback to develop him. And if it's a superstar, if it is a Patrick Mahomes, then okay. But whether it's Dak Prescott or Tua or Trevor Lawrence, there's no way in the world I'm blowing up my salary cap for a mediocre quarterback, and that's all he is. That when everything is said and done, that's all he is. We've seen what good quarterbacks can do with teams. We saw it last year, Joe, with Joe Flacco. The moment he stepped into the starting lineup with the Cleveland Browns, how it was completely different. And we saw it just last week with stinking Andy Dalton. I mean, how much better was Carolina with Andy Dalton versus Bryce Young? So a good quarterback will take you far, and a mediocre quarterback will keep you, back and hold you back. And I think that's what ultimately Trevor Lawrence is.
Yeah. Well, two trains of thought with that. At the end of the regular season last year, when they lost to the Browns and they lost to Tampa Bay, Trevor Lawrence threw 6 interceptions, right? They get blown out for the first half against Cleveland, made it a game in the second half, and then they were punched in the teeth on the road in Tampa Bay. That was a game that if they would have picked it up, where they could have gotten a victory in in both of those games, they would have potentially made the playoffs. Game on the line against Tennessee, Trevor Lawrence inside the goal line, and that offense can't make or produce points to give them the victory. And here's the other thing too. You're right. There's going to be a tipping point in regards to the quarterback situation. What I mean by that is it started with the Giants. They gave the extension and more money in regards to Daniel Jones, $40 million. Then we saw Hurts get his money. We saw Burrow get his money. We saw Trevor Lawrence get his money too as well, right? There's going to be a team. I don't know when. It's going to be maybe this year, next year, early on, where they're going to say, you know what? The guy's not worth that money. They're going to pull it back, and then all of a sudden we're going to see the market go the other way, and then a lot of these guys are going to be missing the boat that are up for contract extensions. Because I don't think Trevor Lawrence, to me, looks like an elite quarterback. He did for a half a season with Doug Peterson, right? And then people blamed it on Urban Meyer in year number 1. But now he doesn't even look like he's involved. He looks like Bryce Young on a lesser scale, but Bryce Young doesn't look involved or like he wants to play. I see the same out of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it will be Peterson, right? You're not going to bench, Trevor Lawrence. And in fact, they even asked Peterson that, and he kind of hemmed and hawed when he said everyone's jobs are up for grabs and this and that. He was asked specifically, what about with Trevor? He's like, he didn't really quite answer that. But you're not going to fire him. I mean, I suppose you could fire the offensive coordinator. He would probably be first in line. I expect that firing within the next or so. And then if that doesn't change, then it would be Peterson at the end of the day. But, it's all about selling hope, right? And financially, it's obviously a good move because you're not going to pay a guy $55 million. But if you're a Jaguars fan, are you more apt to buy season tickets knowing you got Trevor Lawrence as your starting quarterback this year, or you got 3 first-round draft choices in your back pocket, plus your own, you bottom out, you have 3 or 4 first-rounders next year, and you go get yourself a quarterback. He may not be any good either, but at least you're selling hope. It's like, Chicago did with Caleb Williams and the Commanders did with Jaden Daniels. You're selling your fan base. You're rejuvenating your fan base. I don't think the Jaguars fan base got rejuvenated when they found out they were paying Trevor Lawrence $55 million, and they certainly are now.
He's lost 8 straight games, Scott. They started 8-3 last year. They fell off a cliff at 1-5. He's now 0-3, but you have not seen the progression. It's not like he doesn't have weapons. Brian Thomas led all FBS with touchdowns last year over Malik Neighbors with 17. He's a bright spot, right? Ingram's been a little bit banged up, but you still have Christian Kirk. You have Gabe Davis from Buffalo that was in that offense up until he got hurt on Monday night. You have Travis Etienne and Bigsby that could catch the football. There is no excuse for Trevor Lawrence not to put up numbers, especially over 200 yards. Scott, they've scored what? 17 week number 1, 13 week number 2, and 10 on Monday night. That is pathetic right now. Paying a guy $50 million for those type of returns.
Yeah. And you think about it, the 17 came early against the Dolphins, and that loss is looking worse and worse, after watching Miami play these last 2 weeks. Like, you couldn't even hold on to a lead against Miami. So that came in the first half. They didn't score the first half of that game. And then the 7 of the points against Buffalo came when it was garbage time. They only scored really 3 points early on. That's it. So and then they didn't score against the Browns, basically. They couldn't get anything done there. It's going to be a long road for them.
Now, I will say this. From the gambling perspective, right? They were a hot play on Monday night in regards to people taking the points, right? And we know which CJ Stroud and Houston did, 7 points. In this spot, divisional game, I'd be inclined to take the points on the road, 6.5. I think they bounce back to at least cover that number. We'll talk about it when we come back. We're breaking down week number 4 of NFL action right here on Football Full Circle. Lisi and Wetzel, keep it where it is.
There's smart.
And there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here
and win.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
In 1926, the NHL grants franchises to Chicago Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings. In 1932, Jimmy Foxx hits his 58th home run of the season. And in 1941, the Brooklyn Dodgers win their first pennant in 21 years. In 1955, outfielder Al Kaline is youngest batting champ at the age of 20. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Lehigh University scientists have discovered that Hellmann's Real Mayonnaise, in addition to being a delicious sandwich topping, may hold the key to unlocking the secrets of nuclear fusion. Fusion on Earth means superheating hydrogen isotopes to millions of degrees centigrade, hotter than the core of the sun, which turns it into plasma, a soup of positive nuclei and free electrons. Hydraulically whipping a giant vat of Hellmann's mayonnaise turns it into a material that simulates exactly the physical and elastic properties of hot plasma at low temperatures without any of the bad side effects. And later makes for a delicious lunch. Follow me at G Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Money line.
Times would be 3-0 if Levis just stopped those turnovers. It's like, and again, there will be times to bet Tennessee, but Will Levis is a problem, Donnie. He is one of the worst quarterbacks in football as long as Will Levis protects the ball. It's like, it's like if you bet the Browns, you're like, man, if Watson gets back to form, this team's incredible. It's not going to happen.
Catch Money Line with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you. So now you can get the winning edge anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you. If you got an earbud. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
All right, continuing the conversation, week number 4 of NFL action. We left off talking about the AFC South divisional matchup between the Jaguars and the Houston Texans. I told Scotty, I understand it's a short week. I understand the Jacksonville Jaguars have absolutely looked pathetic. But in terms of this spot, sitting at 0-3, going on the road, this is the last-ditch effort. I would take the 6.5 with Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. I actually would close my eyes and take it, Scotty. I don't think anybody's going to bet them in terms of this situation. That's actually why I want to jump on board. Going up against a divisional opponent, maybe they lose it by 3 or 4, but I think I'll be within the number.
Yeah, this really is a classic opposite pick, right? I mean, who in their right mind is just, chomping at the bit to be able to bet Jacksonville on Sunday after watching them play, on Monday night. So from that standpoint, I agree. It's better to be on the side of the boys in Vegas than the side of the public. That said, C.J. Stroud's not good for all his, great merits. He's not good as a favorite. Hasn't covered any games this year, even in their victories. Covering or winning by 2 is 2.5-point favorites in week number 1. So this would be to me, a stay away game. I don't think, maybe it'll get up to 7. I think the money would come in, as you mentioned, on Houston. So it's probably only going to go up, not down. You can't play any worse. This is a classic bounce back spot, right? And you're right, division game, which are generally closer, embarrassed not only, on the field, but on national TV. You're going to find out the makeup of this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Like, if they don't play well, they could lose a close game, Joe. So if they don't play well and they get blown out again, then you just write them off. Then there's something to the core with that team, and don't put your faith in them ever again. So I suppose I would take a flyer on Jackson, little bit, but boy, it wouldn't be easy. I'll tell you that.
You got to tread lightly. You got to have the bottle of Tums on the side, just in case, because they're going to make you sick throughout the way. So that's the way I would play. I do want to, before we break down some other games, if we're looking just big picture, right, and we're looking at the quarterbacks, to your point, Sam Darnold, we saw Justin Fields elevate his game. He's 3-0 now in regards to that team. We saw Malik Willis step up. I'm not suggesting Malik Willis is anywhere near where Darnold and Justin Fields are. But, comeback player of the year right now. I mean, would you give it to either Darnold or Justin Fields, assuming one of those teams win the division?
Yeah. They would be the logical favorites, right? I mean, you could throw Andy Dalton in there if Carolina goes on some crazy run. Would they give it to? Would they consider Aaron Rodgers as a comeback player since he didn't play last year? They could do that.
Yeah. I don't know, though. Here's the thing. I mean, it's almost like, Flacco coming in at the end of the year. Nobody expected anything out of Sam Darnold, right? Once McCarthy went down, it was like the season was dead and buried. And Justin Fields, technically, to your point, wasn't supposed to be the starter in Pittsburgh and was given the opportunity. And now he's obviously 3-0 and has this team fighting for potentially number 1, seed in regards to the AFC. When you look at this matchup, Steelers on the road against the Colts, right? This was a game they got absolutely abused last year. Remember the Colts beat them. Pickens was caught not blocking in regards to that game. They got kicked in the chops. What do you think about this matchup, laying 1.5 on the road against Anthony Richardson? I mean, that's a cheap number. I thought actually Pittsburgh would be close to a field goal in terms of this matchup. I still like the Steelers on the road.
Yeah, I tell you, there are a lot of lines I really like this week. I really just like, and that's one that jumped off the page. The 40.5 is kind of weird. I thought that was a little high, but you want to give me Anthony
now.
39? Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I thought it would be closer to 36.5, 37.5, but I guess the Colts defense is so bad that you can't go that low. But it's how can't you like Pittsburgh, right? Anthony Richardson, against that Steeler defense, really? We saw what they did with Bo Nix. I mean, I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of success. Now, it's indoors on the carpet. That might help him a little bit, but you got the little mojo going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Will they be able to score? Like, if Justin Fields, though, to be fair, they haven't really accomplished Pittsburgh anything more than what they were supposed to if they were going to be good this year. Like, if you looked at their schedule before the season began and you said, okay, they might be able to win against Atlanta. They should beat Denver, and then they should beat who would they beat this past week? I forget offhand. But they're winning games, Chargers, right, at home. So they're winning games that they were supposed to win. Let them get into the meat of their schedule. But I do like Pittsburgh, absolutely.
You just don't like Fields, Scotty. I know you don't like Fields.
He's awful. They're winning in spite of him.
Right here.
The winning edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. Shop Chuck Sanders. The Bengals will dust themselves off and take on the Panthers this week. Cincinnati 0-3 on the season. They lost 38-33 Monday at home against the Commanders. Joe Burrow, 29 of 38 passing. He had 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. What needs to change? Burrow said,
The common denominator from the first 3 weeks, we've had opportunities and didn't cash in on those. So whatever we got to do to get better this week and get better in the spots that we need to is what we're going to do.
The 3-0 Steelers visit the 1-2 Colts this Sunday. Quarterback Russell Wilson remains limited. Head coach Mike Tomlin still won't say Justin Fields is the starter.
When Russ gets to an appropriate point of health and we have a decision to make, I'll make it and I'll announce it and I'll be really transparent about it.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
I'm still going for it, even with higher stroke risk from atrial fibrillation and a regular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Over a 3-year study, Eliquis apixaban tablets reduced stroke risk better than warfarin, and over 97% of Eliquis patients did not experience a stroke. A first stroke occurred in 2.9% of warfarin patients versus 2.3% of Eliquis patients.
Don't stop taking prescription Eliquis without asking your doctor. It may increase your stroke risk. Eliquis can cause serious and in rare cases fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. A spinal injection while on Eliquis increases risk of blood clots, which may cause paralysis, the inability to move. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding, unusual bruising, or tingling, numbness, or muscle weakness. Medications such as aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners may increase bleeding risk. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means. It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
All right, breaking down the star quarterbacks. We left off talking about Justin Fields. I know Scotty thinks Justin Fields is terrible, but Scott, you got to be honest.
Star quarterbacks.
Star quarterbacks. He threw for over 200 yards last week. He's starting to get
200. Wow.
God,
really?
He's winning games. Everybody wants to bash Justin Fields. All he does is win games. I'll tell you what,
Kenny Pickett won games. Kenny Pickett won games. Ben Rudolph.
Come on.
They all won games in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh went to the playoffs last year with you and I at quarterback. You know,
even Steeler fans are embracing Justin Fields. You can't tell me what old man Russell Wilson, they'd be 3-0. At some point, Russell Wilson would turn the ball over. No, they
didn't score a touchdown against the Falcons, and they won the game. You're telling me Russell Wilson wouldn't be able to do that? You know, they didn't score a touchdown, and they won. He would have beat Denver and Bo Nix.
They go on the road. Justin Fields throws again for 230, 240. They make a convincing statement win on the road in Indy, double digits. You're not going to give the kid credit. You're not going to say he's doing well. Well, I mean, you can't. The difference between Justin Fields and Tua is that in big games, Justin Fields, at least right now, is 3-0. And before the injury with Tua never stepped up in a big spot. So you tell me, who would you rather have under center?
Well, I don't want either one. So, I mean, you're not giving me a great option here. So you pick your poison.
Right.
So,
but
I will tell you,
we're going to transition.
I will only tell you, as I always like to say on the podcast, don't believe me.
Right.
Just go watch the press conference from yesterday of Mike Tomlin when they were throwing all these cupcake questions. All these one-sided, Justin Fields is great, this, that, what have you, questions towards Tomlin. And you know what he said? He said, you know what? We had an 0-3 to start the game. We had an 0-3 at our second drive. Our best play came when we only had 10 players on the field. Whose fault is that? He did everything but kill the poor guy. You know, so if Mike Tomlin is not willing to anoint him as his number one guy, and really, you know, it's basically said our offense stinks and we're winning on defense, then why should I go out of my way to praise Justin Fields?
Tomlin is a master of the media. He doesn't want to pump up Justin Fields. He wants to get the most out of him. And I got to be honest, he's won the locker room. You can't go back to Russell Wilson at any point. If this team is 4-0, you can't turn to Russell Wilson and be like, here, take the keys to the Ferrari now. No way. You can't do that. Russell Wilson wasn't throwing for 300 yards per game with Denver last year. I think we need to really dial it back in regards to his performance. Touchdowns to interceptions, that ratio was there. But he wasn't throwing for 270, 280 per game and lighting it up, Scotty. I mean, let's be honest. It was more of a ball control attack.
Interception ratio was pretty good. I mean, it was pretty. But if you looked at the Steelers' schedule, Joe, before the season,
right.
And if you wanted to make the case, and I did, that the Steelers would be pretty good, they would challenge for a playoff spot, right? You looked at their schedule and you said, all right, they're going to have to start off strong because the back end of their schedule is just idiotic. I mean, it is just monstrous. One, great team after another, right? The final 8 games of their schedule is just brutal. So they had to win against Atlanta. They had to beat, the Chargers at home. They had to beat Denver. They got to beat Indianapolis. Because once they get to the meat of the schedule, then you'll really find out about this Pittsburgh Steelers team. All right, can you score 20 points and beat Denver this year? Yeah. Can you do that against the Chargers with a backup quarterback in there? Yeah. But are you going to be able to do that against Cincinnati and Baltimore and Cleveland and Kansas City and Philadelphia and Dallas and all the other great teams they have on their schedule? No. That's where we're going to find about how Justin Fields isn't any good.
All right, so at what point will you then say I'm wrong on Justin Fields? If he has the team at, let's say, 11-6 at the end of the year, is that good enough for you?
If he has this team at 11-6 that he plays, obviously, then I would say okay. But I'll throw it back to you. He goes 11-6. You know what? He's on a 1-year contract. You're going to give him $40 million a year, 45, because that's the going rate. Oh,
well, I would because
I would not.
Because he can run. He can run. He can run.
These quarterbacks that can run, you can count on one hand that ever won a Super Bowl, and it's only a matter of time before they get hurt. It's only a matter of time. So you want to give Danny Nichols with the Giants? He got hurt. What did he hurt throwing the ball? No, he got hurt running the ball. They're all going to get hurt, Joe. I'm not doing it with a quarterback.
All right, let's see what happens. I brought up to you in the break our Miami Dolphins. I think Mike McDaniel is an absolute atrocious coach. I keep saying it. They should have never have given him the money. He beats up on mediocre competition. We saw it again last week. Forget the injury to Skylar Thompson. This was a game where you could have utilized Waddle. You could have dialed up packages for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, again, 40 yards on 4 receptions. What are we doing with Mike McDaniel? And again, we're not winning anything, Scott, no matter whether Tua got hurt or not. That is not the issue. Our defense is absolutely pathetic. We never step up in a big spot. We can't stop the run, and that's continuous from year to year to year. And until they get rid of Mike McDaniel, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. His numbers, Joe, I'll read them off. I've given you these before. Against winning teams, the Dolphins are 5-16 straight up. 19-8 against the bad teams, but 5-16 against the winning teams. I haven't won a playoff game in eons. In 5 games without Tua, they average less than 17 points a game. So the offensive genius of Mike McDaniel clearly is tied in with Tua. He's not a genius, I suppose, with all the backup quarterbacks. And there's a whole slew of other Tua numbers, and obviously that he's not, quarterbacking. But they don't beat the good teams. They're lousy on the West Coast. He's not that smart. I don't know how. What is Skylar Thompson doing on this Dolphin team? Like, I bought into them this week. I really thought, okay, if he's still on a team after 3 years and there's no other backup quarterback, outside of Huntley that they signed this past week, but Tua is susceptible to injury, right? So if there was ever a team that needed 3 quarterbacks on their roster, it would be the Dolphins. But they only had 2. And this guy's been with the team for 3 years, so he's got to be good, right? After 3 years on the team, and he stinks. He's got no business being in an NFL uniform. So what is he still doing on the Dolphins? Why don't they have a real backup quarterback?
I agree with you 100%. I agree. And here's the other thing, Scott. If you think about Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love goes down. Malik Willis didn't throw a touchdown pass in the league before he got to Green Bay. he found a way to get the most out of Malik Willis, right? O'Connell in Minnesota, love him or hate him, he took a journeyman quarterback in Sam Darnold. They're 3-0. So when we talk about, masterminds, guru, offensive genius, it's certainly not Mike McDaniel. It's more Matt LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell, because they've gotten the most out of less in terms of the quarterback position than we have with two of the fastest players at the wide receiver position in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and we still can't score more than 3 points in a matchup.
Yeah, you said it in the break, and I've been saying it for a while as well, Joe. When everything is going great with the Dolphins, it's all honky-dory perfect. That's why they beat up on the bad teams. But when they hit just a little bit of adversity with this club, his lack of leadership on the sidelines just comes streaming out. I mean, he looked like a deer in headlights 2 weeks ago. No answers this past week. No innovation, no ingenuity, no anything. The team plays down. They're not excited at all. He's just not a good coach. I don't know when the media is going to stop, kissing this guy's butt. Maybe a loss at home against pathetic Tennessee will be the answer. But if the Dolphins don't win this week, after what Tennessee did to their season last season, backup quarterback or not, I mean, listen, they just signed him. They just gave him an extension. They're not going to fire him. I get that. But it's just there's no hope in Miami if they lose this week. Just none.
I know. They're laying 1.5 against Tennessee. This total, 36.5, Scott. Unbelievable. That's another dead under. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Yeah, it's getting cooler. Football weather is here. Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The son of Ryan Routh, the man accused of a second assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump, has been taken into custody on federal charges of possessing child pornography. Investigators say they discovered hundreds of files with child pornography during a search of Orrin Routh's residence in Guilford County, North Carolina, Saturday, conducted in connection with an investigation unrelated to child exploitation. The two charges he faces include receipt of child pornography and possession of child pornography. Outgoing West Virginia Independent Senator Joe Manchin said Tuesday he will not back Vice President Kamala Harris's White House bid after she came out in favor of changing Senate rules to pass abortion protection laws. Manchin, who is retiring and left the Democratic Party earlier this year, said, quote, "Shame on her. She knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. It's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together." Outgoing Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, another retiring Democrat turned independent and filibuster defender, also panned the idea. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Every business faces challenges, but complicated, expensive, and uncertain shipping shouldn't be one of them. With USPS Ground Advantage from the United States Postal Service, you can avoid all the noise. No more unexpected surcharges, hidden fees, or complex rate structures. It's just easy, cost-effective, and dependable shipping. Tune your business's frequency to success and turn shipping to your advantage. Learn how at USPS.com/advantage. USPS Ground Advantage. Simple, affordable, reliable.
Total Wireless is made to totally keep up with you. We now have unlimited data that never slows you down, covered by the Verizon 5G network, and all for less than $30 a month when you get 4 lines. And the best part, we give you a free Samsung Galaxy A54 5G when you switch to the Total 5G Plus Unlimited plan. Visit your local Total Wireless store today. Total Wireless, we're totally with you. Actual speeds may vary by location. For data management practices, see TotalWireless.com.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
Continuing the conversation, we left off talking about our Miami Dolphins. They're 1.5-point home favorites over Tennessee and Will Levis. Will Levis has looked absolutely pathetic. And I could say this, the one bright spot last year was when he was catching 13.5, 14 points against the Dolphins, and he stepped up and pulled that matchup out in the last 4 minutes of that ball game, Scott. I mean, 36.5, we talked about the total. Here is the problem. This line, 36.5, suggests that we're not getting over that, right? And that Miami's offense, whether it be Huntley, whether it be Tim Boyle, whether you scrape a high school quarterback off the street, we're not getting the football to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle enough to get over this total.
Yeah, it's not that many points, right? But it would have gone under this past week, and I had the over this past week, and I was looking pretty, right? 17-3, one quarter. I mean,
Hurt me bad.
Killed me, right? Just especially when you think you're gonna easily win, 20 points in the first quarter.
20 points in the first quarter. You're thinking first half, you're thinking they throw the second half. The only did was run Devon Achane into the line of scrimmage. That's great. You burn 8 minutes of clock and you don't score any points.
Yeah. And we made fun of Skylar Thompson, but what is Tim Boyle doing in an NFL uniform? He was atrocious last year with the Jets. Is it something about former Jet quarterbacks that the Dolphins feel in line to get Mike White last year and now Tim Boyle? Are you serious? There's nobody else out. But see, Joe, this is what happens when you pay a quarterback $50 million a year. You can't afford even a halfway decent backup. You delegate all that money to your starting quarterback. It's nuts what these teams do. So, I mean, again, that's why I said, if you really look at last year, the turning point came, that home loss to Tennessee. That was just a killer, just a crusher. Nationally televised game. I think it was a Thursday night game, if memory serves me right. So if they didn't circle this game this year, and if they don't come out fired up and play better after playing so lousy last week again, it's just, then there's no hope. I mean, I can't believe Tennessee actually opened up as a road favorite. Will Levis, this Tennessee Titans team, now they're a slight underdog, but still, you're getting the Dolphins at pick'em. That's so tempting. I mean, they're kind of like Jacksonville, right? They keep it in the state of Florida. I mean, you can't play any worse than what Jacksonville did. You think they're in a bounce back spot. You can't play any worse than what Miami did. Embarrassed, like they think they're in a bounce back spot at home. I mean, I guess I would play the Dolphins if I had to, believe it or not. But I think Huntley will be the quarterback, and he's the better of the three.
Hope. Yeah, he is. He gives them a glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
Right. Now, we've talked about a handful of teams, right? Coach of the year. Here's the front runner, Kevin O'Connell at plus 320. McDonald with Seattle, they're undefeated at 3-0. He's 5-1. Mike Tomlin at 9-1. Jim Harbaugh at 10-1, LaFleur at 10-1, Canales at 16-1, the outlier, Scotty, Dan Quinn, 23-1. If he has this team at, let's say, 6-3 overall after 9 games, he's got to be in the running with a rookie quarterback, especially knowing that he could go over the 6.5 win total, which is what they projected this year, right? And we saw Dable and Pete Carroll exceed that a couple of years ago. I would take a flyer on Dan Quinn right now at 23-1.
Yeah. Where's your boy Mike Tomlin? Did you mention him, or did I not hear that?
I just said 9-1. He's third best price.
Okay. I would think, the Vikings probably have the best chance to stay afloat on that stuff, with some of those other head coaches. Like, I think Seattle's going to come back to the pack once they start facing some real teams. In fact, I love Detroit this week. I think they're going to crush them. I think Pittsburgh's going to come. Yeah. Seattle's beating nobody. Just what we saw last week against the Dolphins, right? They really did beat the Patriots. They beat the Dolphins. So I think they're going to come back to the pack a little bit. Minnesota's the one that, if Sam Darnold does this, you get Hawkinson back, I can see them continuing to win, and if that's the case, then I think he would get it. I think he'd get it hands down. I think Washington would really they'd have to challenge for a playoff spot. And I think that's probably what would push Minnesota over the top. You can make cases for 3-4 of these guys, but I think Minnesota's got the best outlook of maintaining what they're doing right now. And keeping the head coach into the O'Connell into the Coach of the Year award thing.
Yeah, it's possible. They love throwing. I mean, Canales is in there. He got one victory with Andy Dalton. I mean, come on. I will say, I think the job that Sean McVay did last week in regards to getting the upset over the 49ers, 6.5-point dog, multiple injuries across the offensive line, Puka out, Kupp out. And knowing how pathetic they were a couple weeks ago, to get that 3-point win was monumental, right? They really salvaged their season. They're on the road this week against Caleb Williams and Matty Eberflus. 2.5-point dogs, Scotty, on the road. 40.5 is the total. I love the Rams in regards to this matchup. I know the numbers suggest Chicago at home, but I can't buy in to Caleb and Eberflus as a favorite here.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to know the status of Cooper Kupp. You know, Nakua's going to be out, but I'd like to know the status of those guys, the offensive line. They got to get any of those offensive linemen back. But ultimately, you know, Caleb Williams and Matthew Stafford. Stafford, obviously very familiar with Chicago, you know, playing for Detroit all those years. It's hard to, you know, put American money on Caleb Williams over Matthew Stafford. But that said, down 2 weeks ago, up this past week, you know, come back to the Pack or the Ram. You know, you could have inspired efforts and win despite not having, you know, your better players 1 week. It is hard to do that, Joe, 2 weeks in a row. They're not particularly good on the road. So I you know, I probably would lean towards Chicago, believe it or not.
Really? Oh, Scotty.
Yeah.
Scotty.
At home. You know, Taylor played well, or at least he showed signs. He threw for the yard. Still made some mistakes, you know, this past week. Definitely made some mistakes, but at least he's showing some progress. And the Bears are still a pretty good football team. You know, they kind of have to rally the troops here. Big, you know, again, if you want to make the playoffs, you got to win games like this, right? I mean, the Bears got to win against the Rams at home. So,
yes. Now, I will say, kind of can continue with Caleb Williams. We saw a breakout performance over 300 yards. You need that type of effort against a Rams secondary that got torched by Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray. We'll come back. We'll talk Bucs Eagles right here on Football Full Circle.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall. The World Series is on its way, and SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Scott Wetzel.
All right, wrapping up the show, we talked about it right before break. Tampa Bay and Philadelphia. Tampa Bay last week, absolutely pathetic home performance as a 6.5-point favorite to Bo Nix in Denver. They lose that game 26-7. Baker Mayfield only 163 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Scott, on the flip side, we saw the Eagles contain Derek Carr and that high-powered New Orleans offense. They win it 15-13. It's a rematch of the divisional game last year where Tampa Bay just kicked Philadelphia right in the chops. Rematch, Philly on the road, laying 2.5. I got to be honest with you. I like the Bucks to bounce back in a big way here.
Why? I love Philadelphia today.
No, you don't. Do you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Listen, they've won 2 in a row, so they turned things around a little bit. Listen, Hurts is not good on the road. His road numbers straight up and against the spread are not good. I'll grant you all that. But again, another game in which the Eagles, in this case, no doubt circled the calendar as soon as they saw Tampa Bay on the schedule this year. They played like garbage. You said it in the postseason last year. Chance to kind of rectify that. Baker is Baker, right? He's a halfway decent quarterback, but you put him in a big-time spot, and I'll go the other way with Jalen Hurts. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay looked awful this past week. Now, listen, and the Eagles' defense, say what you want about it, over the last year or so, but last week they looked spectacular. So I'm thinking maybe they turned a corner, maybe just maybe. Yeah, you give me Philadelphia basically pick a -2.5. Absolutely.
It's back-to-back road games. That doesn't scare you?
Yeah. No, I actually like that. I like that.
What? Really?
Yeah, hold on a second.
I don't like
hold
that.
on. I'll give you some numbers here. I got all the numbers.
Give me the
here
numbers.
on
I'm
the
curious.
website.
Give me the numbers.
All right. Teams last year, back-to-back road games, 28-43 straight up, but 36-32-3 against the spread.
Well, guess what? In this spot, right, the Eagles have to win. So the straight-up number is better than the spread, right?
Yeah, but it tells you that the numbers are inflated. So if the Eagles, in this case, were a normal situation, they'd probably be a 5.5 or 6-point favorite. It was 500 2 years ago. Same things, about 15 games under 500 on the road. But
43, though. 28-43 straight up. It's 15 games under 500.
Yeah, but they're covering the spread. So again,
how can they cover the spread as a favorite?
No, not as a favorite, as an underdog.
Right.
They're covering the spread. But
so the numbers
they should be a 6-point. But they should be a 6-point favorite. But because it's back-to-back road games, it's only a 2.5-point favorite. Now, when they win at the buzzer by 3, you win instead of losing if you're laying, 4.5, 5, we'll say.
This could be a best bet for me, Tampa Bay and Jacksonville.
Way.
Yes, could be a best bet. Now that you said
those
that,
are the bets in which your bookie calls you back 15 minutes later and says, "Listen, you want to put that in again?" They're just checking. They'll call you when you put bets in like that. You might as well throw the Dolphins in there as well, make it a 3-teamer.
What are we doing with Cleveland? What are we doing with this Cleveland team? Deshaun Watson, he's got one foot dead and buried. If I was Stefanski and I'm coming off a Coach of the Year where I led the team to the playoffs with basically an old man in Joe Flacco, if Deshaun Watson loses to the Las Vegas Raiders here, you got to move on. Give me famous Jameis to lead this team. They got to do something, Scott. They can't ride this guy out into the ground. He's killing them right now.
You have him for 2 years. You got him locked in for next year as well with guaranteed money. If you looked at the contract, after next year, they can kind of get out of it a little bit without getting themselves crushed. But you're locked in. It's the same as Trevor Lawrence with Jacksonville. You're locked into the guy. You want to fire the head coach? You want to fire the offensive coordinator? They made a clear decision. They didn't want to bring Flacco back because they knew that people would be calling for Joe Flacco, and rightfully so, right? So he should go out there and win. You would think if Andy Dalton could go out there and beat the Raiders, then so should he. But he's looked so bad. I've watched a lot of their games. He's looked so mediocre. But you know what? He's 10-5 as a Cleveland Brown. With everything is said and done, he actually has a way above average record, straight up. So, what do you think about your boy Sluka, real quickly, with UNLV?
Hang on 1 second. We can use the winning record with Deshaun Watson, right?
Yeah.
Even though he's not, but when we do it with Justin Fields, I'm crazy out of my mind. I just want to see the correlation. That's a great correlation. You answered my question. Thank you. Now, I will say this. I really like Las Vegas here to bounce back. I know they got abused by Andy Dalton.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.